Chapter 24. Blind. Elle was terrified. They had trusted Anthea to bring them to Aunt Witch in hopes that she would help them return home. They trusted Anthea after she saved their life time and time again, putting hers in danger. They trusted Anthea for days as they shared stories and experiences through this crazy adventure. And for what? So that Aunt Witch could bake them into a pie? Tears began to well up in Elle's eyes, and they turned away to run, but immediately tripped and fell. Elle turned to look at the witch, who wasn't there. In fact, Elle saw nobody in the doorway or around them. They stood up and wiped their eyes and the dirt off their clothes.
Elle, are you feeling okay?
Anthea asked, trying to hold back laughter of this sudden and bizarre event.
Let's go in.
She was getting a grasp on Elle's shoulder after she was tossed around by the fall, and if you listened closely, you could hear her chuckle as she failed to hold the laughter back. They walked into the cottage. It was cozy, and Elle immediately felt at home here. It was easy to tell that Aunt Witch was a good witch just by looking around. It was clean, but not too clean. Just clean enough so you weren't disgusted, but dirty enough that you felt at home. The walls of the cottage were covered in picture frames, hundreds of them. Each was a painted portrait of an ant that were very unique in their own way. One ant had the biggest mustache Elle had ever seen on a face. Another picture was 90% hat and only 10% ant. There was an ant with 2 heads, an ant with 4 eyes, and an ant as big as a human. Or were the humans in the painting ant-sized? Elle was deep in thought about a human-sized ant when Anthea brought them back to reality.
Come on, Aunt Witch is probably in the kitchen. That's where she is most of the day,
she said, tugging on Elle's ear to get their attention.
Ooh, I can't wait to eat you up.
Elle heard the same voice from before, and though they didn't like what they heard, they followed it through the house to what they could only assume was the kitchen. When they entered the room, what they saw was quite unexpected. Aside from walking in on someone's very round bottom sticking out from the oven, which was a sight on its own, the kitchen itself was filled with ants. Ants on the counter, ants on the shelves, ants on the floor, and ants even in the refrigerator. They were all over the place, but they didn't seem like ordinary ants. It's as if they were helping out, as if they were baking. If Elle's mother had seen such a thing in her own kitchen, she would have screamed. Ant infestations are not something you would ever want, especially in your kitchen. Elle gasped. The figure perked up from the oven and turned around so quickly, the tray of cookies she was holding almost slid right off into the floor. Though this wouldn't have been such an unfortunate event, as there were at least 100 ants at Aunt Witch's side waiting just for that. There were all sorts of ants, young, old, buff, skinny, fat, tall, short, blind. Judging by how they stayed by her side, Elle decided that this must have been the ever so talked about Aunt Witch. They couldn't believe they finally made it here. But she didn't look much like a witch. If anything, she looked like a spooky chef. When she looked at Elle, she gasped with delight.
Oh, good! Good! I was just testing out a new recipe! Here, tell me what you think!
Aunt Witch approached Elle so quickly and smoothly, it was as if she were floating inches above the floor. Her posse of ants followed her as best as they could, but because of their small size, they fell behind a bit. When they reached Aunt Witch, they gathered around Elle's feet and watched eagerly, hoping for a crumb or two to drop their way. Some ants were intrigued by Elle. Some were scared because of the stories they had heard of humans. And some didn't even notice them, too focused on the possibility of a dropped crumb. Aunt Witch grabbed a cookie from the tray and popped it into Elle's mouth forcefully. Elle chewed, and then fell to the ground.